So I realized that the way to daven, and I encourage counselors to do that here, rather than try to get away from what's going on down here and talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, take what's going down here and bring it up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is one of the holiest places on earth. This is such an astounding thing. You don't want to stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and leave HASC down here. If you want to really make it difficult for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, take HASC and bring HASC up to him and say, okay, say no to everybody here.
Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Inspiration for the Nation. I'm Yaakov Linger, and this week I got to go to Camp HASC. Well, it wasn't this week, it was in the summer, but I went to Camp HASC. Camp HASC provides over 350 children and adults with intellectual and physical disabilities an unforgettable summer experience. You'll hear more about Camp HASC in this episode. I got to talk to Rabbi and Rebbetzin Penner, parents who, before they were parents, they're involved in Camp HASC. They were staff there, and they were even the rabbi and rebbetzin of Camp HASC. And you'll hear about also they later on in their life they had a child who became a one of them became a staff member there, and also they have a few of their children became staff members there, and they also had a child who is a camper there. So to hear about their experiences of both being a rabbi and rebbetzin of a community, the challenges that are there, and also the challenges that is there to raise their children, to raise a child with special needs, and they're incredible people. This week's episode is powered by Joma. You're going to hear more about them, their hotline, their podcast, and how incredible they are, and the work that they're doing is truly amazing. And also, this episode is in memory of Shimon David ben Yaakov Shlema, Miriam Sarah Bas Yaakov Moshe, and now here is our conversation inside Camp HASC. It's a little different, by the way. The audio you're gonna hear, and visually if you're watching it, it's a little different than usual. But bear with us because this episode is incredible. I'm Yaakov Langer, and you're listening to Inspiration for the Nation. Hi everyone. Thanks for having us. Like the rabbi said, it is my first time in HASC, and I always heard nice things about this place, and I was roaming around for a little before. I got to see the bubble, and March 27th, 2023, make sure you're by the race. But it's really beautiful what you all do here, and very inspirational. Who's ready for a good show tonight? Come on, this isn't like a random, who's ready for a good night? Let's go. Okay, so we're here tonight with the Penners, Rabbi and Rebbetzin Penner, who have been in Camp HASC for a very long time, and I want to talk to you about who you are and about your Camp HASC experience. So first off, do you remember the moments when someone told you about Camp HASC? Where were you, and what was that like?
I don't know if I remember. I remember my interview. And I remember kind of coming in on a bit of a whim at the time. It was probably Mark and Dina Lerman who probably introduced, at least me. He was the head counselor at the time. And I remember being completely unprepared for what I was going to see here, as many of the counselors here probably were when they got on the bus for the first time. The first time that you meet your campers is before a 3-hour bus ride where you can't exactly exit the room. And, some people have a lot of exposure to people with various challenges and disabilities. Some people have very little, and at the time I had very, very little. And I'll never forget that first bus ride. I think that every counselor here has a moment on the bus, on their first bus ride up, where they're like, did I really sign up for this for this many weeks? And it lasts for a couple of days. And then there's just no place in the world that you'd rather be.
Wow.
No place in the world that you'd rather be than Camp HASC.
And you both came to camp not knowing each other. Is that correct?
We did not know each other, no. We were pretty young when we started. I think you have to be a little older now to be a counselor in camp. But in those days, I think it was 16 or 17 we were. And it was just starting to become like a thing to do at that time. And I guess I didn't even realize how popular of a thing it was becoming to do, because full disclosure, first time that I applied to Camp HASC, the first summer I applied, I did not get in.
What?
They didn't take me. It was the first thing I was ever rejected from my whole life. They didn't take me. I applied to be a waitress, and whatever. There were just a lot of applicants, and there weren't that many spots, and I didn't realize how many people really wanted to do this.
Who didn't accept you? Let's call them out right here.
Yeah, it was probably Zena and Mark Lerman. They're my very close friends.
Oh, wow, okay. Had a good
But
ending.
whatever. All good. It's okay. I came back the next summer. They took me the next summer. I was a counselor here for 3 summers, a division head for a summer, and all was good.
But we did not know each other coming up, and in
No.
fact,
Had nothing to do with each
in
other.
fact, if we want to sound frum, even though we did meet each other here, we are a HASC couple, but the first 3 summers, we really just did not know. We did not know each other all, and that's interesting because the camp was a third of the size, maybe. This room that we're sitting in, that is now the shul and is often crowded,
Was the entire camp?
was the dining room.
Oh, okay.
Dining room. Everybody was here. The reason why we sort of
You might
ended.
not have seen the dining room yet. Have you seen the
Yeah.
dining room yet?
Not yet.
Dining room
It's
is
ginormous.
palatial.
This is a small room.
The way we got together was that we had a heter to sit at the same table, because I was like the camp rabbi and Adeena
And I was a division head. We were both head staff.
So we sat at a table right over there, and they kind of just, at that point already, you're gonna sit to talk to each other the whole summer. Might as well make it for tachlis.
We weren't the only ones who did that this time.
Yeah, that summer that we.
It was a very productive summer,
Yeah.
shidduch-wise.
If I remember correctly, there were 200 staff members, which is, again, astonishing to those who are here now. What's the number here now? Many more, 600
600.
now.
Wow.
There were 200 staff members that summer, and there were 10 shidduchim, which means basically 10% of the camp wasn't paying as much attention to their campus as they should have. But Baruch Hashem, it was a very fruitful summer for Klal Yisrael.
Right.
Yes, and Baruch Hashem, we met here, yeah.
Okay, and then after...
We even got engaged here.
Yes.
We got
even
engaged
got
in Camp
engaged
HASC.
here. And the amazing
Fun
thing is
fact.
we got engaged here, not in the summer. There used to be people here on campus year-round.
Doing what?
There were those who actually lived up here, just like you have residences and residence homes. There were those who lived up here. There were residents who lived up here, so there was a
weren't group
year-round.
homes yet at that point.
The cons of blessed memory, the original cons, were up here, and we got engaged up here in February, which is quite astonishing because Adeena didn't see it coming. So you gotta wonder, what was she thinking that we'd come up to HASC in February? But it was a good shtick.
So
was a good
you
shtick.
met here, you got engaged here. Was
Yes.
your chasna here also?
We
or-
didn't have a chasana here,
No.
no, although that would have been a much cheaper option than what worked out, yes. And we brought our family back here.
Right. So you it's interesting because you came here not knowing each other. You got to know each other here, and then you came back married here.
We did.
And
A few years later.
so what was that experience like, I guess, being here single and then being here married? Was there a big shift at that point or not yet, really?
Well, we weren't looking to meet somebody the second time around. That was a big shift.
More focused.
Yeah, much more focused. Well, we came back, the biggest difference wasn't so much that we came back married, but that we came back, we were blessed
4 kids.
with 4 kids, Baruch Hashem, pretty quickly, and we came back with the 4. So the experience of being here with our young children was really a transformational experience for us and for the family. It was certainly some of the best years we ever had. The kids here, it's just a wonderful place to be. And we didn't know it, but it really prepared our older children for the fact that their brother would develop autism. And it was astonishing how little of a deal it was to the older siblings because, oh yeah, it's like that person in Camp HASC. It's like that person in Camp HASC. I really feel, anyone who spends a summer here, whether you're 2 years old or whether you're 22 years old, you'll never again look at an individual with quote unquote a disability. You'll never look at them the same way again. You go from you go from stepping away and trying to run away almost to just feeling a gravitational pull to anyone who has a disability of sorts. It's a transformational experience. And the fact that our kids had that Kadosh Baruch Hu allowed our kids to have that before their brother faced regressive autism and changed was a tremendous gift.
It was a gift to us as well.
Right.
I always look at it as a tremendous bracha. You know, sometimes people get thrown into the world of disabilities and like having no idea. We had background, you know, we knew when an issue was arising, we knew who to reach out to, you know, we kind of knew the steps that needed to be taken. And a lot of people just, you know, really would have no idea what to do, but we were familiar with autism, and, you know, we kind of had some kind of a heads up, and it really felt like the Rebbeinu Shalom had really prepared us for our life, for a good part of our life's journey by placing us here for all those summers beforehand. And as my husband was saying, certainly with our kids also, it was just, you know, it was very interesting. But yeah.
So I have two questions. First off, if you could explain to people that I'm sure a lot of people in this room know what autism is or has a good understanding, but I'm sure there's going to be people listening to this that don't really know. They've heard the word, but don't really know how to define autism. And I know, you know, each person that has it, it could be drastically very different. That's my first question. And the second question is, at what went through your mind when you realized that your son has autism?
So let's start with a definition. I guess we wouldn't, you know, a definition is probably easiest found on the internet, I guess.
Yeah, but
no, but I'm saying,
but so someone who's experienced,
we never looked it up,
right?
So we what we're saying may not be scientifically based. You know, we know that, you know, our son Matis, who's now 26, he certainly doesn't have the usual types of human interactions. Not looking to socialize, not looking to make eye contact. We don't know exactly what information that comes from the outside looks like by the time it gets to Matis, but there's some sort of a filtering system there. Sometimes it's that it's too much. Individuals with autism are sometimes very overwhelmed by lights and sound and things like that. You know, when you speak to Matis, you know he's getting something, but you wonder, is it the same just direct sound to ear to brain that it is in a normally developing person? You almost feel like there's kind of a filter there. In fact, sometimes you see him, you know, mouthing some of the words afterwards, as if he's processing it again and again to try to understand. You know, depending on how challenging it is for them to interact with the world, they end up not being able to learn and develop like other children. It's not that they're not inherently bright or intelligent, but they're not necessarily able to go through those normal stages because so much of what we learn comes from the outside and processing it. And he's not able, you know, he wasn't able to do that. In certain ways, Matis is a genius. He has, you know, photographic abilities for certain things. He's tremendous on the computer. He knows almost every Disney song ever by heart. He has, in certain ways, he has almost savant-like abilities, but in certain ways, you know, he's very, very challenged. Most
kids with autism are challenged in terms of their verbal skills, their ability to communicate. Is this working? Their ability to communicate and socialization, you know, reading social situations, understanding, you know, people's faces and reading faces and things like that. So, you know, that's what were you going to ask me about?
Yeah. The second thing in terms of, you know, what it was like for us when Matis was, you know, facing this challenge. Matis has something called regressive autism, which means he wasn't born with it. Matis actually was up to about 100 words at year 1.5. He was incredibly verbal. And then he had a virus for a couple of days, which again, we'll never know if that had to do with this. And after he was kind of still for a couple of days, he just started losing his language. He started losing all those words. And even 3 years later, when he started to talk again, 3 years of silence.
Wow.
It was like a different voice. It was different words. It was a completely different person had been implanted in there. Did we see it as autism at the time? We didn't really know at first what to make of it.
At first, we were not sure, but we called in a lot of people, therapists and stuff like
Right.
that, to try to figure out what was going on. It was very strange. He really did. Seemed to be typically developing until that point. He was very curious and he seemed very intelligent. And again, he had he actually had like really a tremendous vocabulary, so much so that I remember at one point we called in, my sister's a speech therapist, and we called her to do a screening on Matis's older brother, who was only 10 and a half months older than him, because he was barely talking. And we were like, Matis is going to overtake him. So it was like strange. Like he was really talking a lot. And then came down with this virus at about 19 months old, was really out of it for a week, and just like in very strange way, just like really, really out of it. And when it came back to, we saw he was like, he just wasn't using his language anymore so much. He wasn't really responding to his name. It was kind of a slow process, and then just completely stopped. And like we said, like didn't hear him speak for like 3 years after that, until he was about 5.
Right. I don't think that we saw it coming. In other words, I think first we took him for hearing tests and things like that. I think what gave us a step up was, it's very hard to be a doctor sitting with parents and giving them a diagnosis for their son that's going to affect the rest of their life. And I could really understand a doctor sugarcoating it. I could totally relate to that. And I think that was where we had a little bit of a leg up. Because when doctors were sugarcoating it, we were like, we know autism. If that's what this is, we've been exposed to it, and it's not a mild language issue. It's a serious life-changing sort of situation. And that really helped us get him into services very, very quickly. And, Baruch Hashem, to do what could be done. Do what could be done for him.
And, being a rabbi, being a Rebbetzin, I spent Pesach with you, and I was definitely with Matis.
Saw us running.
By meaning, yes, you kept on running after him. First of all, he's very quick. And so what is that challenge like for you, kind of being a rabbi and Rebbetzin, like you're on public display, and then all of a sudden, tachlis, you have to make sure your son is okay and watched.
It was definitely challenging. Certainly at the beginning when, people didn't know what was going on. We really just looked like very inept parents. Matis was behaviorally very, very challenging. He was very hyperactive, like all over the place. We looked like we didn't know what we were doing as parents. And, it was just kind of very stressful to be in that place. You're the rabbi and rabbi in the community, people always looking at you, and you're supposed to be these model parents and whatever. It was very hard. But not so far into our journey, my husband gave up and gave a drasha about our experiences and what we were going through on Rosh Hashanah, a very powerful drasha. And so once people knew and there was some kind of an explanation for what was going on, it was a little bit easier to go through it publicly and to be able to ask for help from people and,
Up until that point, people didn't realize that
people didn't really know.
One thing we definitely learned from this, and we share this with shuls when we talk about it, is, I think there's a gut reaction when we see a parent with a child who's out of control. Let's say in the supermarket, and the child is just grabbing stuff off the shelves, and you almost can't help but judge the parent a little bit. Like, what kind of parent would let their child do this? And I say, there was, we used to, in order to keep Matis from running away, when we were in the supermarket, we used to put him in the actual cart itself.
Not the seat.
The actual
inside,
cart itself.
Bananas.
That's where he would be. Mm-hmm. And it worked fairly well in the aisles. It did not work well when you're checking out, because then his arms reach from all the candy and all this and that. And he would have a field day when we were trying to pay. And I always said, I wish that I could wear a shirt that said, I'm not a bad parent, my child has autism. Now, you wouldn't do that, But I sometimes felt like I wish I could just say, I'm doing the best that I can. There's nothing more I can do. And I think it's something we try to share with people, that it's really easy to judge other people when they can't control their children. Children are sometimes more difficult than other children. And you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. It's really, it's a challenge. I think it was also specifically difficult for me because I wanted Matis to daven a little bit. And as he got older, he would sit with me. Now, I have to say, it was here that he learned to daven?
I think so, actually.
Right. I think it was one summer here. We don't know how he did it. A counselor in HASC one summer took Matis from barely recognizing the Hebrew letters to reading from the Siddur. It was like a Nes Nigla.
No, that wasn't a counselor. That was a reshab worker we had.
That was a reshab worker that we had.
Yes.
A reshab worker that we had.
But the counselors here worked on davening with him.
They worked on
very hard.
davening with him. So I wanted him to be with me. The challenge was that, he would start talking out loud in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, usually a Disney movie. He'd just start reciting a Disney movie.
Hopefully a good one.
Which they're all good to him. Okay. They're all good. And he knows every line of every one. And he would start doing that. And it was very strange for me because I had to follow the same advice that I had given to counselors here as the camp rabbi, that if you're responsible for a child or for a camper and they're making noise during davening, your responsibility is to take them out. Yes, even in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei, even in the middle of whatever, you're supposed to take them out. And it was a strange kind of out-of-body thing, sort of the instructions that we had always given for everyone else's children to sort of suddenly, apply to us, and how it felt sort of being outside of the room with Matis when the whole shul was in there and I'm davening in a hallway, So it certainly was it was an experience. On the one hand, being counselors here prepared us. On the other hand, it put us in a strange kind of situation, like we were suddenly on the other side, right? Visiting day, you see here when visiting day, when the families come of all the individuals, and it's like the one time you see all the families over the summer and you feel a little bad for some of them. And it's tough, and some of the individuals here are very multiply handicapped, and you just, and I remember that first visiting day where we were here, back as a family, and suddenly we looked at all those parents that were coming in and we're saying, that's us now. Now we have a child with a disability. And it was a very jarring sort of reality that these aren't some people that just, sometimes you meet a family once on visiting day. It's almost like they were created for visiting day. Like you don't think about where they were the rest of the year and what they are and who they are. They're these people that show up on visiting day. And then if you're a counselor second year, they're people that show up again on visiting day.
Like a surprise character in the TV
and
show.
you realize no, these are real families. These are real people like us. And that, I think, was a growing experience for us to.
It also just made us realize much more, like, what a tremendous thing, what we did when we were a counselor. You appreciate in such a different way when all of a sudden you actually have to, like, the counselors here, they're really the kids' parents for the entire, time that they're here. You're responsible for them, right? 24/7. You're really acting as their parents. Then when all of a sudden you're a parent, you really understand what that means, and come to a whole new appreciation of camp and what the counselors here do, and it's amazing.
I think that as counselors, you may have a little bit of a sense of what you do for the individuals, helping them, allowing them to have a great summer, allowing them to smile. You have no idea what you do for the families. And we never understood that till we were a family itself. You have no idea how much what it gives them to not simply have some time off, but every parent feels guilty that they need a little time off from their child who takes up so much of their time. And to know that when they're here, they're actually having a better life than the one they have at home. That when they're here, they're actually receiving at least, if not more love than they're able to be given at home. it's hard to describe what that means as a family, to be given that gift by the counselors.
That's really beautiful. And we're going to get back to the HASC conversation, but I want to talk about your personal lives a little.
Oh, great.
First off, what's your social security number? Rabbi, so you are the Menahel.
As a rabbi,
Yeah.
my social security number is not going to lead you to a great fortune, so I'm not that worried about sharing it here. But
As a podcaster, I'll take what I can
yes,
get.
as a podcaster, that may be different. But
So what exactly do you do, and what's the process like being a menahel and giving people smicha?
It's a little hard to describe what the menahel's job is at yeshiva. We have 1,000. I'm just for the men. There's 1,000 undergraduates and 200 smicha fellows. So you're talking about a yeshiva of 1,200 fellows. At this point, I focus mostly on those who are pursuing smicha and beyond. And our goal is to create, to recruit, to train, to place, to support the rabbinic leadership of most of our community. It's an enormous responsibility, but that's what we try to do. YU and RIETS serves a certain part of the community, however you'll define it, centrist orthodoxy, modern orthodoxy. Within that segment, which is about 500 institutions between shuls and organizations and schools, they're pretty much looking to us for the rabbinic leadership. So it's a very difficult job, but it's something that really gets you out of bed in the morning, understanding that, you're going to be part of creating the leadership for the next 30, 40 years for this community.
Yeah, I'd be scared to do that.
It's scary at times. It's one foot in front of the other. I remember at one point being at a meeting where I realized, and this was already 15 years ago, where I realized that we were in charge now, the young guys, the people who were Talmidim of yeshiva were now the ones sort of running the yeshiva, and that was scary for all of us, as it should be for those who are attending the yeshiva. But someone's got to do it. Someone's got to stand up and try to convince people that it's important to work for the Jewish community. We have a tremendous dearth today of people going into education, men, women, tremendous lack of people going into positions of the rabbinate. And the community won't be served unless we can succeed.
I'll be right back to this week's episode. But first, I need to tell you about a podcast that you need to listen to. I'm going to read some notes and then speak from my heart. Everyone likes a good podcast. They're looking for one common factor. They want to learn something new that will help them live a better life. Sometimes they're looking for something small, like an entertaining, funny show, and sometimes they're looking to drastically improve their life. The JOMA podcast is that, a way to learn about the crucial topics and ideas in the world of health to help you navigate a better and healthier way to live. The Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association shares preventative health information geared to the members of the Orthodox Jewish community. Their wonderful and engaging host, board-certified pediatrician Dr. Alyssa Minkin, each episode delves into various topics and challenges that so many people have or could have. And there's more. Listening is one thing. You can also call the JOMA hotline, 929-4GESUND, if you don't have access to the internet. There's no reason in 2022 that you need to be in the dark. And some of the most talented doctors and healthcare professionals in our community are here to help. Go listen to the JOMA podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and call their hotline 24/6 at 929-4GESUND. And I'll spell that out. That's 929, well, I'll number that out, 929-443-9868. The JOMA podcast, I've advertised for them before, and I've gotten a lot of thank yous for talking about them and introducing their show, if someone didn't yet hear about them, to people. It's a very important show. I think what I'm doing here and other Living the Lchaim shows are great and they're helpful, but I don't know if you need to be listening to it. I think their podcast is I don't say you have to listen to every single episode, but scroll through their list of episodes and there's going to be a topic that you should be more informed on. You should know more about. And they're all professionals. They're great and they're making this world a healthier place. I'm just going to read some of the latest episodes from their show and scroll through. They have so many episodes. Food for Thought with Anna Sherman. The Curious Neuron. Parenting with Compassion and Curiosity with Dr. Cindy Hovington. Chronic Pain in Children. It's Not All in Your Head with Dr. Jennifer Weiss. Specialty Spotlight. Eliza Chevy Kasai, MD, General Trauma Surgery. First Do No Harm with Dr. Christy Huff. And a school psychologist speaks her mind, Dr. Alana Dumont. There are so many important topics and conversations being had on the JOMA podcast. And if you have any questions, you can call their hotline, and they're great. We love them there. Go check them out. There will be a link in the show notes, so you can just easily click on it. Now, back to my conversation with Rabbi and Rebbetzin Penner.
Are there ever any times where you meet a person that you're like, this is going to be a rock star leader Yeah,
all the time.
Really?
All the time. When you're doing this for 25 years, you get a sense of somebody. The challenge is, does that person realize that that's what they can do?
they don't know.
I find there's so many people who never thought that they could be a professional teacher or a professional rabbi. It just never crossed their mind. It's not that they thought about it and they decided it's not for them. That's what I say everybody should do. Everybody should think about it. They should think about whether it's for them. It's not for everybody. But so many people just, I don't know, either they idolize their current rabbeim so much that they say, I can never be like that. But we don't need too many of those. We don't need Rosh Yeshiva. We need people on the ground. And a lot of our time is spent trying to get people to go into the field and trying to get the wrong people not to go into the field.
That's tricky.
That is tricky, and we spend a lot of time. You should know, right now in RIETS, everyone who's considering being a rabbi professionally takes a standardized test in emotional intelligence.
Really?
Standardized test in emotional intelligence, which was actually the work of the president of the other YU, Yale University. It's not as good, but it's whatever. Somebody's got to go. We've got to have colleges. So the other YU is his name is Salaway, and he is a Salawaychik. He's a Salawaychik.
Got it.
And he designed this amazing test to be able to tell you whether you have the skills to make good decisions and read people and this and that. And then we actually have a rabbi psychologist who works for years during all of semicha to work with guys on their strengths and their weaknesses in this area. So it's really important for the right people to go into it and the wrong people, and we've seen a lot of those wrong people, to make sure that they don't. But there's so much on the line right now with the next generation of leadership. So much on the line.
Wow. What advice would you have for, people in this room or people listening that they don't think they're going to become a leader of Klal Yisrael, but we could always learn from leaders or the skills that leaders have? What advice would you have for us?
I think it's just a question of not being cynical about yourself and not being cynical about leaders. We've all seen enough failed leaders, and they hit the papers, but we can't really live without leaders and role models. And I think that you have to realize that you have to attach yourself to people. You have to be careful. You can't put down your guard in 2022, but you have to be able to look up to people, and you got to remove the cynicism. And you have to realize that they were in your seats not so long ago. And they were also regular people. And they also had different job opportunities. And instead, they became a person that affected your life. And do you want to be that person? I grew up in Fair Lawn, New Jersey. And I had the privilege of having Rabbi and Shevi Yudin as my rabbi in Rebbetzin. And they're legends. And for many of us who grew up in Fair Lawn, it was just obvious that you were going to try to do this. I mean, you couldn't do it the way the Yudins did it. I mean, that was whatever. But it just seems so obvious. Here are two people who are clearly going to Olam Haba, clearly. And I guess we all want to go there. And
Not yet, but...
I mean, not yet, in
We're gonna
time. They say it's good.
Yeah.
And people that were just having such an impact, and you grow up in a community like that, and you have to think, is this something I could do? Today, it's much harder. It's much harder. People don't really think that it's something that a real person can do, a real person can afford to do. It's just not true. It's not true. People can have a huge impact.
It's beautiful.
And a very meaningful life.
And a very, very meaningful life, right? I think people feel bad, for Rabbi, you have such a tough life. There's nothing else we'd rather do. In fact, right now, we're not in the shul rabbinate because what I do at Yeshiva, I think, is critical. Somebody's got to do it. But I have to say, we were like the happiest rabbi in Rebbetzin ever. Like, there was nothing that made us, all these politics, things, hours, it was the greatest thing. It was so meaningful. It was so wonderful. It was, a lot of these things get a bad rap, I think.
I think when people see in life, when it comes, and this makes sense for Camp HASC, when something comes with hard work, people very often assume that it's not as enjoyable. When it's just the opposite, the harder it is, the more challenges, the more difficulties, the more pleasure you could get from that experience.
And the more hours of your week you're doing something that's, one thing I say in YU when I tell people to think about what they're going to do for their careers. First of all, I notice that many people fall into careers. They spend, I speak to guys all the time that for sure spend more time this year picking out an esrog than they did, field day, esrog, right? They spend more time picking out an esrog than they did figuring out what they're going to do for their profession. I said, what are you, crazy? I said, this is what you're going to do for most of the day, for most of the week, for most of the year, for most of the rest of your life. So I'm not saying you should be a rabbi, you should be a teacher. I'm just saying, think about it. Like, it's going to take up most of the rest of your life. So certainly it's a decision that is critical in terms of what your life is going to be like, what you're going to be doing every day, what you're going to, The important thing is, I think, that everybody think long and hard about it. It's a really important decision, and I think a lot of us are needed now to help Klal Yisrael, and we can help Klal Yisrael in many different ways. This is a tremendous way to help Klal Yisrael, but to use your time well.
Rebbetzin, could you tell us about your organization that you run?
We just recently, we actually launched this together. An organization called Kesher Families, and it is an organization that offers support to families of individuals who identify as LGBTQ. We are the parents of a child who is gay, who came out to us 12, 13 years ago, and it's been quite a journey that we've been on dealing with this parsha in our lives, and we've learned a lot, struggled a lot, and learned a lot along the way. And we have a lot of people that over the past number of years have been reaching out to us for support, a little hadracha, a little guidance. Not that we know exactly what we're doing, but we're, trying very hard to make our way through this. And the volume of people that have been reaching out has been pretty enormous, so we felt like it was time to make this into a more formal organization. So you could look us up online. You Google Kesher Families.
You mentioned this idea that we might not know exactly what to do, but I think so many times in life, just whatever challenges people are going through, like meeting people who have gone through the experience, just being together with them and saying, okay, you kind of understand what we're going through. You don't feel as alone. It's really
and
powerful.
that's a huge part. That's probably a number one thing that you can do for somebody, is just make them realize that they're not alone in this struggle, because it's a really lonely place to be. And especially if you don't have anybody to reach out to. We started with this 12 years ago, and it was years before we spoke to anybody about it. And we have people that reach out to us after their child came out 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, whatever. And it's so gratifying to feel like they have somewhere to turn. They have a number to call. They have somebody, to talk to. It's a huge thing. It's huge.
And there's really very few organizations in this space. Thank God we have, for almost every minor thing in the Orthodox Jewish community, we have 16 organizations dealing with it. This is just, there are those who are in this space somewhat. We're not the only ones doing this. but because it's a little bit taboo or very taboo, there's just nothing there. And the reality is that even if one doesn't know what to do with this, it's not a small percentage of the population. It's a real sizable population of individuals, and we have to try to step into that breach to help them.
Oh. So, Rebbetzin, I heard recently that you donated a kidney.
I did.
What was that like?
Amazing
She was
experience.
bored from the other stuff.
That was amazing. An amazing, awesome, very humbling experience to be able to take part in a mitzvah like that. It just, to really change somebody's life like that, save somebody's life. I got somebody off dialysis.
Wow.
It's a really, it's
But
an amazing
you have enough on your
Right.
plate. What made you go like, okay?
I was
let's-
inspired a number of years ago. I was sitting one year, I think it was actually a while ago. I think it was in about 2016 or 2017. I was at YU runs Yarchei College for Rebbetzins once a year. So I was at a Rebbetzin conference, and a rabbi named Rabbi Ari Sittner, he wasn't giving a session on this. He just he got up to speak at lunchtime, like literally for, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes. He had recently donated a kidney, and he wrote a book called 100 Questions, something like 100 Questions I Asked Before Donating My Kidney. And he just wanted to throw it out there to people. He gave free copies of his book to all the Rebbetzins there, and he just wanted to create a little awareness and, try to let people know that it's really a doable mitzvah and we should really just think about it. And I don't know, I grabbed the book, I read it cover to cover, like very quickly, and I was really inspired by it. And I just felt like, oh my, like this is a mitzvah that it really is doable. Like it seemed, at least from his book, it seemed doable. I said, gee, I feel like it's something that I would really like to do. Think about it. We're born with two kidneys. Rebbe Menachem creates us with two kidneys, and we really can function perfectly fine with only one. What are we doing with that other one? I don't know. I was very inspired by it. The truth is that at the time, I didn't pursue anything right away. Matis was still living at home at the time, and I kind of felt like I didn't know if it was so fair to do that. You need to have a few weeks to recover afterwards. So if you're a primary caregiver to a child with special needs, maybe it's not, the best thing, to do. But a few years later, a good friend of mine from Holliswood, her mom needed a kidney, and she had come to me, to talk about what was going on. And I said, and I was like so excited because I had information to share with her. I was like, I heard, there's this organization, Renewal, and you have to reach out to them, and you have to do a program, and people come get swabbed for your mother, and it's going to be great. And I said, you have to get Ari Sittner to come speak about his experience. And sure enough, they did. They organized a program with Renewal, and a lot of people came out to be swabbed. Ari Sittner spoke. It was so incredibly moving. Not only did he speak, but his recipient, who was actually an Israeli woman, a young Israeli woman, happened to have been in the States at that time, and they convinced her to come and speak also. So it was really a very, very moving program, and a lot of people swabbed that night, and I swabbed also. The truth is, I knew I wouldn't match for my friend's mom because I didn't have the same blood type. You need, the same blood type to actually match a person, but they give you a card to fill out if you'd be interested in, if you don't match for this person, would you be willing to donate to somebody else? And I checked off the box, that I would. And that being said, it's a long way between, actually, saying that you want to do it and then getting there and really doing it. And I can't say I wasn't nervous, at all, and, whatever, a little bit jittery at certain times in the process. But sure enough, after I checked off the box, they called me just a few months later. It's not actually that hard to match for somebody for a kidney. I don't know if people know that, but for bone marrow, it's like 1 in a million. It's, for kidney, it's really not that hard to match with somebody else. So they tell you that if, you check it off, it's likely that within a few months you'll get a call. And sure enough, a few months later, I got a call. And somebody called me from Renewal and said, you swabbed at such and such event, and, the woman that you swabbed for, you didn't match for, and she already has a kidney, but, would you be interested in giving to someone else? You matched for someone else. And it's kind of hard, actually, when you get that call, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? That, if you have an opportunity to save somebody's life, it's
You're sorry, let them die.
not really interested. Sorry, I checked that box. Oh no, I was like, okay, like I hadn't actually been to a GP, to a general practitioner in quite some time, and I had no idea what was going on in my body and if I would actually be a viable candidate. But I said, I'm willing to go through the testing. Go through the testing. You tell me that I can do this, then Emir Hashem, I will try to do it. And it's a long process, until there's a lot of testing that needs to be done to make sure that you're healthy enough to donate and that you're actually a good match for, whoever it is that they think you're matching for. But within a couple of months, they told me that, I was good to go if I wanted to do it. And
it's an amazing
amazing experience.
I say when we get to Olam Haba, she's just going to be on the easy pass. Seriously, if you go, how could you not? You're coming through with one kidney. I just have to convince her not to donate the other kidney because that's going to be a problem. But yeah, it's an incredible thing to watch, even as a husband, to watch from it's.
Do you have pressure to give a kidney now yourself?
They don't.
Nobody wants his.
Really want one. Okay. No. Anybody here knows my medical history. I'm not doing anybody a favor. They say keep your organs. It's okay.
They don't want his blood either.
But I have to say, and honestly, I don't think, as much as I think it's a wonderful thing to do, I don't think I could have.
Okay, that's very honest.
I don't think I could have done it. I think that Adeena sees things that are right as you just do it.
Wow.
And that's, it sounds like a nice thing. I don't think I could have done it myself. But I was not terribly surprised that she did it.
Did you meet the recipient?
I did. Yeah, I did just a couple months ago.
What was that like?
It was great. I had been in touch with him. He very much wanted to meet me. I mean, I was interested in meeting him also, but it was just interesting. I had been in touch with him and his wife, texting and, phone calls and stuff like that. But we actually finally met person to person. It was just very overwhelming,
He calls her, what does he call you?
He's my new big brother. He's a 68-year-old big Russian man.
Very Russian. I would have thought it would take in both of her kidneys to whatever, but yeah.
It's funny to think that my little kidney is functioning in this big man's body.
That's so cool. No, but that's I don't know. That's so cool that we're connected and we're so vastly different, but we could really help people that are so different than us.
It is amazing. The kidney starts to work within seconds. It's an incredible nace. The kidney, once they put it in, it starts to work within seconds in the new person. It's just it's really an incredible thing. And to meet him and to meet his family and to realize that she saved his life. There's no other way to say it.
He loves to call me every now and then, just remind me that his kidney's working really well.
Yes, he feels. Right. It's a little weird for me to know that part of my wife is in this large Russian man, whatever, but it's whatever. It is. It saved his life.
Right.
So it is what it is. We just get over it. Right.
So
he's such a sweet fellow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Rabbi, I know you're working on a book about davening and tefillah.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that?
I've been working on it for very, very long. The interesting thing is it started here in HASC. When I was the camp rabbi, so I needed I wanted to speak about something. It wasn't this, today in HASC, anybody have an all-star lineup of people coming through to speak. We didn't have that luxury, so many years ago of that many people. So I tried to speak, as I'm sure Rabbi Willig gives now talks. So I wanted to do something I thought would interest everyone. So I started really researching and thinking about tefillah. And the reason why I wanted to do it then, and the reason why I'm so passionate about tefillah, is because it's something we all do anyway. We just don't find the meaning in it. I mean, if you think of the number of hours every year that you daven, what else do? You eat, you sleep, you work. What else do you do that you spend so much time as davening? I remember when people would come to me before Rosh Hashanah as a rabbi, the gut reaction is, it's before Rosh Hashanah, so what else am I going to do this year? This year I'm going to add this. I'm going to not talk Lashon Hara for that hour. I'm going to start this. I say all those things are great. But why don't you take something that you're doing already anyway and find meaning in it? Why don't you just make it meaningful? We spend an hour a day talking to God, and we're not growing from it. We're not reeling from it. So when I talk about tefillah, I spend very little time talking about the meaning of the words. And I think that much of tefillah education is just what the paragraphs mean and bowing here and bowing there. I talk about, as best as we can understand, what it means to stand before God and have a conversation with Him. And that's very much changed my life. We'll talk about it here, Mirz Hashem, Bli Neder Friday night at the Tish. We'll talk about some tefillah issues like that. And I find that it resonates with people. I find that it really resonates with people because, again, it's something we're doing anyway, and you're suddenly realizing that something you do every day is one of the most amazing things you could ever do. It's astonishing. We could talk to the creator of the universe. I always say, one of the nice things about God is if you daven Shemona Esrei, He's never more than 3 steps away from you. You're always 3 steps away from God's office. That's incredible. Wherever you are on the planet, you're 3 steps away from being able to talk to God. And it's natural. It's always been, the Gemara says, it's always been something that was difficult for us to appreciate. It's not a modern phenomenon. But the more that we can try to invest in that, the more we really invest in our relationship with Hashem. And that's why it's something that I'm very passionate about. When the book will be finished, I don't know. We had a lot of siyata d'shmaya this summer so far. So hopefully, Mirz Hashem, in the next year or so, Volume 1 will be able to come out.
How has your experience at Camp HASC affected your tefillah / this book?
One of the things, I think I spoke about it last year, was sort of, they say if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. If you could daven here, it's not exactly the quietest shul.
Right.
There's a lot of distractions, and I think you really have to work on your davening to be able to daven here. One thing that I learned over the years, we talked before about, matis and having to leave shul with matis. And what I always would try to do, and what I always tried to do as a counselor when I was here, if I wanted to concentrate on Shemona Esrei, was to sort of imagine that I was standing up before Hashem and try to drown out everything else that's going on. So I'd be standing outside in shul. My son Matis would be to my side, and I'd be trying to daven in the hallway, and he'd still be reciting things from the Lion King and this and that. And I'd spend davening, trying to retain focus on Hashem and not think about, Simba and Mufasa and all those important people. And then at a certain point I realized that rather than imagine that Matis was down there and I was up there with Hashem, what if I imagined that we were both standing there with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And suddenly Matis's lines from the Lion King was a kind of tefillah that was 20 times more powerful than anything I could be saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I mean, he could say no to me. He's not going to say no to Matis. Matis never did anything wrong in his whole life. How could he say no to him? So I realized that the way to daven, and I encourage counselors to do that here, rather than try to get away from what's going on down here and talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, take what's going down here and bring it up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is one of the holiest places on earth. This is such an astounding thing. You don't want to stand in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and leave HASC down here. If you want to really make it difficult for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, take HASC and bring HASC up to him and say, okay, say no to everybody here. That's even if you're the Ribono Shalom, that's got to be a really, really tough no to give. So I think that a lot of the aspects of, of what it means to daven and how to relate to those around us, I think, we've learned here. And, it's changed and affected every part of our life, our children's lives. We have 2 kids who are counselors here. We were here. Matis has been here now for 12 summers, 13 summers.
14 summers.
14 summers. It's really, it's affected just about every aspect of our life. Blessed just about every aspect of our lives.
Can you imagine your life if the Rebbetzin, once you didn't get in, if you didn't reapply? Like how drastically different your lives would be?
I knew I'd get in eventually.
So as we wind down, I have just a few more questions. It's very interesting. I think it's very obvious that for anyone that comes to Camp HASC or sees the footage online or just understands what it is, that obviously for the family of campers, it's a major relief for them, and for the campers themselves, it's tremendous. It's a blast here. It's incredible. They really grow, but it's not as obvious. But obviously, when you think about it, it is that the staff and the people that are here, how much it affects their life, and it makes you think like, is this all for the campers or is this for the staff? Is this for both? It's a very interesting idea that for people that don't know HASC, how would you explain the effect it has on the quote unquote the staff?
Tremendously. I think tremendously. I'm sure the staff gains as much as the campers gain over the course of the summer, for sure, if not more. First of all, it shifts the whole, way, you look at life, the way you look at people, the potential you see in people, the goodness you see, the neshama that you could, you find in people. Seeing everybody as individuals, being tolerant of all different kinds of people and behaviors. I think it teaches you a lot of that. What else would you say?
I think, one thing, I remember once, I was actually sharing this with someone before. I think there's two other things that you really learn here. Number one is you learn, like you were talking about, hard work. And you learn how meaningful it can be to just give to other people. I think you don't realize that. I don't know what else could give you that the way HASC can. HASC is hard. It's hard. The counselors work really hard. And I think that at the end of a summer here, you suddenly realize that you can devote yourself to somebody else and have it be the most fun summer, the most amazing summer. That's one. Number two, and this is just in a different direction, but I think what's beautiful about HASC, and really it comes from the campers themselves, is that they don't have masks. They're not wearing the masks that everyone learns to put on over the years. Everybody here, everything is just real. Everything here is real. And I think that's one of the things that people find so attractive about individuals with disabilities is they just don't have all the hang-ups. They don't have all the pretending. What you see is, you can see their neshamas. What you see is what you get. They're real. And I think that the counselors also feel an ability to be real and be themselves here in a way that you can't always be in the outside world. It's so strange because, people come here the first time, and somebody comes to visit and says, like, you'd imagine seeing such an imperfect view of the world. Could you imagine there's so many people who have different disabilities? Like you imagine you'll come into HASC and you'll just see an imperfect world. This is how the world is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. This is how the world's, that it doesn't matter your level of frumkeit or whether you're misnagdish or chassidish or orthodox or white. It just doesn't matter. If the world could be like this, you'd imagine Mashiach would show up a lot earlier. And going through that experience just brings people back summer after summer to a place that's really like an olam hafuch. It's an olam hafuch. It's really this is what it should be like. And I think you can't be here without being
where everybody is included and everybody has a place.
Right. It's not the real world.
Everybody's loved for exactly who they are.
It's not the real world.
Okay.
But it's a great place to build out from, to make the world much more like this place.
I think it's the mission for anyone who works here or comes through here to try to take that light and spread it throughout the world.
Right, and they do.
Is there a story that either happened in your life or you've heard that really inspires you?
You got a Mata story?
Tell a Mata story. I got to tell a Mata story about the first time he ran in a HASC marathon. So I got a call. I don't remember exactly what year this was. Mata had only been in camp for a couple of summers at this point, and I get a call during the year from a guy. He calls up, he says, "My name is Lchaim. And I was a counselor in Camp HASC this summer, so I was not Matis's counselor. Obviously, I wasn't Matis's counselor, but I do know Matis. And I'm calling because the HASC Marathon is coming up in a few months. And, you know, I'm a runner. I do marathons, and I really want to do the marathon. But I really would love to do this marathon with a camper who, like, you know, can run it and can do it. And I think Matis could do it. And I'm wondering if you'd send him to California with me to run the marathon with me. So honestly, I thought he was a little cuckoo. I was like, I don't know this guy. And I want to send Matis across the country with him to run a marathon. I said, Matis, yes, Matis is a runner. He runs. He is fast. And he's hard to catch up with. I said, but I don't know that he would be interested in running a marathon, 13 miles. I don't know. Maybe he'll do it. Maybe he won't do it. The guy wants to do the marathon. Is this a good idea? You know, there were a lot of reasons why I was a little skeptical. And I kind of said to him, okay, you know, let me think about it, I guess, and call you back. And I got off the phone and I said to my husband, is he crazy? Like, I'm not sending Matis to California with somebody I don't know to run a marathon that I don't know he's going to run. And my husband goes, why not? I'm like, what do you mean, why not? He's like, he's going to have a great time. I said, he will. Like, I don't know. The whole thing just seemed a little bit crazy to me. And also because I didn't know the guy. Turns out my brother-in-law knew him. And he said, absolutely, we should send him. He's going to have a great time.
See, till that
and
point,
it was just
Bob,
very
I think
interesting
you have
to
to
me.
add that till that point, Matis had run a lot, but he ran away. No, really, he ran away. He escaped. When he was 10, 11, he would jump out of windows and just run places. And it kind of never occurred to us that if put on a track, he could run to something instead of running away from something. It was, right? That's, I think, what was so...
Yeah, it was interesting. But whatever, I mean, first of all, it was amazing because Lisa, he did the marathon, and he in very good time, which is not so surprising, but I couldn't believe that he did it. But what was so inspiring to me about this was the following, that we always looked at Matis as running as like a behavior and something that needed to be dealt with. Because like he runs, you have to keep track of him, you have to know where he is, he's disappearing, this, that. It was always as a behavior. And this guy, Chaim, looked at Matis and said, he could run, he's a runner. He can do marathons. Like he turns his running into something positive and something amazing and like taught him this new skill and like, you know, and he did. And it's funny, if you ever see Matis run in a marathon, he totally gets it. He just goes with the flow, goes with the crowd. Whoever else is going, he's going, and he'll do it till the end. And it's an amazing thing. But I was inspired by this counselor, and it was great. It was such a great story, and he made Matis this whole Snapfish book afterwards, you know, with about the whole experience, and it was incredible. It was
I remember
really
when we
incredible.
got the call that it was a text, I think. I think it was some electronic thing that when you went under the thing, and we thought he was going to run like a mile. Like, whatever, we'll run a mile. That'd be very nice. He'll run a mile, and then he'll say pizza. He'll say he wants to go do something.
Right.
And I remember just getting this text a few hours after the thing
We were
had
jumping up and
started.
down. He did it.
And it said he
He did
finished.
it. Oh my God, he
I'm like,
did it.
That's impossible. But you know what? Sometimes even your own parents don't, you know, I think the message is, like Adeena was saying, that, you know, I think that sometimes because somebody can't do everything, you forget that what they can do. Right, and everyone here, counselors and campers, have things that they can't do so well, but that doesn't mean that they can't do other things really well. And I think we were so used to looking at Matis as someone with a disability, and even like Adeena said, the running was a disability.
It was a behavior.
It was a behavior. It was something that was supposed to be, extinguished. And here you had a counselor who said, "What are you talking about? This is the most amazing thing about Matis. He could run marathons." And we learned a lot. It happened many times during Matis's development that he just exceeded what we thought was possible.
It's really beautiful. For my final question, or it's more for advice for anyone in the room listening or anyone listening on their phones or computers, we all go through challenges in our life. Like we've said tonight, you've gone through a few challenges. What advice would you have for someone going through a challenge right now? If you could speak to them. Speak to me.
Take things one day at a time. When you're going through a challenge, try not to look too far into the future. Try not to catastrophize and think about like the worst, thing that could happen, because you got to get through one day at a time and see how things go. Life takes a lot of interesting twists and turns. You don't necessarily know where things are going. And it's just better to kind of take things slowly as they come, as opposed to trying to look, too far.
Right, we
Make
see
it
this
through
with
each
parents
day.
all the time when they, we meet with a couple of parents a week through Kesher, and they're in the throes of something that they just, how's our family ever going to function again? Time, the one thing I would add to that is I think that while you're going through it, I think to realize that it's what you're supposed to be doing now. And it's not a detour. And I remember once a fellow sitting in my office, he was learning in Eretz Israel, and he was told that he was going to be a Rosh Yeshiva someday. I mean, he's a very bright guy, and they told him all the wrong things, and he's supposed to be Rosh Yeshiva. In the meantime, he was struggling with mental illness, and he was depressed, and he couldn't get out of bed in the morning. Here's this guy who's supposed to be a Rosh Yeshiva, and he can't get out of bed in the morning because of his depression. And I remember him sitting in my office when he came back from Israel. And I tried to explain to him that, who told him that his tafkid in life is to be a Rosh Yeshiva? Maybe his tafkid in life is to show that someone who has depression can get out of bed in the morning. In other words, I think that very often when we hit a time when everyone else is going forward and we're not, we assume that or something's happening to us that's not happening to somebody else. We assume that it's a detour. We're stuck on this place that we're not supposed to be while everybody else is on another place. We just don't believe that as Jews. We don't know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu picks certain individuals, certain families, certain communities for certain challenges, but he picks them. He picks them. And wherever you are is exactly where you're supposed to be. And if your tafkid today, if your challenge today is to deal with a difficult situation in your family, that's not a distraction from what you're supposed to do in the world. That is what you're supposed to do. It's got to be, especially if it's your family. I often run into people that feel like things that are going on in the family is like a sidebar to what they're supposed to be doing in life. Your family is a major part of whatever your tafkid is in the world, has to do with the people closest around with you. Some people are zocha to build a family, some aren't. But the people that are closest around you is clearly part of your tafkid in life. That's not a chiddush to say that. And just to realize that when you're going through difficult times, whether it's your family or it's personal, you're not wasting time. That is your service of Hashem, to figure out how to get through that, that particular time. I'll just tell you
What
one.
Hashem wants from you at
I'll
that
tell you
point.
one story that I told my trainer this morning. I go to a trainer, not often enough, but I go to a trainer, I told him this story that there's a famous story of Aaron Soloveitchik. Aaron Soloveitchik, of Yosef Soloveitchik's younger brother, and he had towards the end of his life some very significant health issues, including some serious strokes. I remember watching him when I was in YU and the incredible effort that it would take for him just to get from the street to his shiur room. He had a terrible stroke. So there's a story that he was in physical therapy in Chicago after one of his strokes, and he's walking between those bars that they use. What do we call them? The parallel bars that you use to do physical therapy. And somebody heard him mumbling under his breath. So they asked him what he was saying. So he said he was saying, as he took each step, he would say, achas, achas v'achas, achas v'shtayim, achas v'sholosh. And what it meant is that even though he's a great Rosh Yeshiva, his Beis Hamikdash was that physical therapy room then. The physical therapy room wasn't a distraction from him learning Torah and being a Rosh Yeshiva. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for some reason, made it that his tafkid during physical therapy, his tafkid in life was to do physical therapy with all of his heart and all of his... And he was counting like the Kohen Gadol. Achas, achas v'achas. Now, the good news about that is it only goes up to 8. So I told the trainer when I'm done. I can't lift this thing anymore. We did achas v'shav. But I think that that's a tremendous lesson for everybody, that wherever you are is where you're supposed to be. The challenges that you're facing, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to be doing now. And it's no less important than the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. That's your tafkid right now. That's what you should focus on. That's what you should do. And I think that once we stop seeing the challenges that we have in life as distractions, as something that's taking me away from what I'm supposed to do, once we realize that that is our avodas Hashem, it becomes a lot easier to manage it and to push through it.
And they're growth opportunities for us. So all of our nisyonos that we go through, whatever they are growth opportunities for us. And we have to stop and think why things happen to us, what we're supposed to be getting out of it, how we're supposed to grow, how we're supposed to change from it. Everything's for purpose. Everything's for a reason.
Well, if everyone could give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode. And again, thank you to Joma. If you haven't checked out their podcast, in the show links, you could go ahead and listen to it, to their podcast. Incredible. Go through, you'll find an episode that piques your interest, and then you'll probably listen to all of them. And also, if you want to call their hotline, the official number is 929-443-9868. It spells out the word gesund, but it's just easier when I say the numbers. So go ahead and give them a call. Thank you so much. If you haven't yet subscribed, what are you doing? There's a party. We have over 102,000 subscribers on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, subscribe on Spotify, subscribe on Flim Flam, the made-up podcast platform that we made up that doesn't exist. Subscribe anywhere you can and share this episode with a friend that it could help. Till next time, be an inspiration for the nation. I don't like that catchphrase. Lchaim. Living Lchaim.